The NEWSROUND on Off the Ball.
With Gillette, for an effortless finish to your day. New Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
This is News Talk.
Hello there, everyone. You're very welcome along to Tuesday evening's Off the Ball. Pretty stellar lineup this evening. We have this hour Tommy Welsh, one of the great hurlers of all time. We have after 8 o'clock Brian O'Driscoll, one of the great rugby players of all time. And we have Dan McDonnell in studio.
Oh, that was good, yeah.
That was cheap.
You told me off air there was something good coming up. There's a spring on your step. It must be a Six Nations week. You just practicing your lines for the telly at the weekend, or what are you up to here?
Don't take it personally.
Getting into your telly mode, yeah.
Of the Irish Independent,
yeah.
Of course.
Thanks very much, yeah.
It was a cheap gag. The Holy Trinity, Welsh, O'Driscoll, McDonnell.
Yeah, well, listen, cheap gags is what you do, Joe.
Wow.
There's plenty more of them in your future.
53106, text number, we're at Off the Ball on Twitter. Penny for Stephen Kenny's thoughts as he watched the game last night. Matt Doherty, reborn, roving right back, assist machine, midfield maestro. Seamus Coleman, difficult evening, even Jamie Carragher. And to be fair, he took no joy in saying it, but at half time he was saying, for the first goal, player ran in behind Coleman, and he just said, look, this is happening far too often to Coleman now, and really the fault lies with Everton. Why haven't they recruited better? And to be fair, they have brought in a right back who Pat Nevin assures us will be closing in on Coleman's position very, very soon.
The guy from Rangers, is this?
Yeah, Patterson.
Yeah.
Meant to be a very good player. So it was a difficult night for Coleman, and I'm sure Stephen Kenny noted it. Now, I still don't think, it wasn't like Coleman looked painfully slow in that moment. I feel like if Coleman was 28, Carragher mightn't have pointed it out in the same way, because that happens to a player of that age. And I suspect Stephen Kenny will take his time here, because Coleman can do a job in a number of positions across, right back or even centrally. But given the form of Matt Doherty, it was maybe a night where you think that could be a pinpointing change in the guard type scenario.
Yeah, it's one of these things where Coleman and Doherty it always had to be Doherty and Coleman in the same game at the same time. It's even though they played in the same side quite a lot for Ireland in the autumn, so it's actually not really a Coleman or Doherty scenario anymore. Maybe, I suppose maybe you're looking at the concept, presuming Ireland stick with the same system, maybe the chances of, I think it was always probably a danger that as Coleman got older, the chances of him playing the wing back role would be less likely anyway.
Yeah.
And then you remember in the games in November there was a big speculation over whether he'd start, and then Imoba Bamidele got injured, so he ended up playing on the right of the back three for the game against Portugal. But maybe the feeling was he maybe going to play one of those two games, and he played both of them. But I don't know. Is it a change in the guard in the Irish context? I'm not so sure. I
would tend to agree with you.
I think the point was made that what was the line? It looks like a championship back four. A lot of the Ireland squad has players from the Championship and League One. So, maybe Seamus Coleman as a one of the best right backs in the Premier League, I think it's fair to say that time has moved on.
Yeah.
But in terms of his suitability for inclusion for Ireland, there can always be a real sort of recency bias and overreaction to a lot of things, and that's the nature of sports debate and so on. Who's to say Coleman won't regroup as Everton try and regroup? They might just need to try and tighten things up for these home games they have coming up, and then all of a sudden you see him put in the captain's display and things can change. But he is, I think he's 34 this year. It does happen, but I think there's a danger in sort of rushing to conclude that is the case very, very quickly on the basis of what was a nightmare of a night. But maybe if and he's made mistakes, and you can't just get away from the fact that I'm sure he'd probably admit that himself, that he's made mistakes. But also, if maybe Everton's first choice centre halves were there, would there be a better defensive unit? Would it be as you could take that argument without wanting to seem like classic, here's Irish show defending Irish player. That's not where it's coming from. But I think linking it to his international position could be a slight stretch.
So Richie, if he's looking for inspiration when it comes to longevity, look no further than Johnny Sexton. That's where you're starting this evening.
Yeah, he's confirmed today that his new deal with the IRFU will be his last. The Ireland captain has put pen to paper on a contract that takes him through the end of next year's World Cup, by which time he'll be 38. Sexton, though, says he's glad to no longer have to face questions about his future, and revealed talks about a new deal progressed quite quickly.
No, like the process only, like there was initial talks, like, you know, a few months ago about whether I had the desire to keep going, and I said at the moment I do, but again, it was never going to be done till this stage of the season, because you just don't know. And again, if you picked up an injury or you think, you know, it puts, you know, the majority of next season in doubt. So you've got to wait. I suppose at this age it's a lot different if you're mid-20s or whatever. But look, it was fine. It was, like I said, we sat down last week and we sorted it out in a couple of conversations. You know, there's the balance, isn't it, between making sure you're looked after, but also acknowledging that you're 36 and that there's risk that goes with that. But at the same time, you know, all you can do is go on what's in front of you. I've hoped to keep proving my worth, and yeah, that's all I can say really. I'm just delighted to keep the dream going, as they say.
Hell of a way to bow out at a World Cup. On the basis of his recent form, this was a no-brainer. I mean, this Six Nations, he's simply just underlined again why he's the best, and the only issue is his body. So the deal is done, and he will retire after the World Cup. We'll talk to Brian O'Driscoll after 8 o'clock about Sexton and, of course, the game at the weekend. Now, there's Champions League tonight, Rich, obviously.
Yeah, Liverpool can take another step towards what would be an historic quadruple tonight. They take a 2-0 lead into the second leg of their Champions League last 16 tie with Inter at Anfield. Liverpool line out with Alisson in goal, a back four of Trent Alexander-Arnold, Joel Matip, Virgil van Dijk and Andy Robertson. In midfield, Fabinho anchors and he's flanked by Thiago Alcantara and Curtis Jones. And up front, the familiar trio of Sadio Mane, Diogo Jota and Mo Salah. One change from Inter from the first leg 3 weeks ago. Samir Handanovic starts in goal. The back three continues. That's Milan Skriniar, Stefan de Vrij and Alessandro Bastoni. Denzel Dumfries and Ivan Perisic provide the width. In midfield then we have Marcelo Brozovic, Arturo Vidal and Hakan Çalhanoğlu. And then up front, Lautaro Martinez is partnered by the returning Alexis Sanchez. Edin Dzeko is on the bench. Things are more finely balanced in Bavaria, where Bayern Munich and Salzburg resume level at a goal apiece, and both matches kick off at 8.
Dan, a 2-0 lead for Liverpool from the first leg back at Anfield this evening. I think there's just a general assumption there's going to be grand.
Yeah, I mean, and the first leg had the potential, it could have finished a lot closer. And the whole sort of stronger Premier League squads sort of theories came to fruition in the end. So, yeah, I don't think people are going there tonight. I'm not sure they're anticipating one of these great European evenings in Anfield.
No, I wouldn't think so. So we are continuing the news round with Richie. It is brought to you with Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Interesting story, Richie. An appeal launched with CAS.
Yeah, and there's actually an addendum to this as well, breaking in the last couple of moments. So we'll get to the CAS news. The Court of Arbitration for Sport confirming today it has received appeals from the Russian Football Union. Their national team was expelled from this month's World Cup playoffs, and its club sides are barred from Europe following the invasion of Ukraine. The Russian Union has also asked for a stay on their expulsions, with their cases pending, something CAS will decide upon in the coming days. But as I mentioned, some further developing news on that. FIFA has announced in the last couple of minutes they're taking CAS's proceedings to one side and saying that Poland will get a bye to the playoff final, which will be against either Czech Republic or Sweden, regardless of what happens with CAS. So they're putting that to one side, saying Poland will get a bye and play either the Czechs or Sweden in the playoff final for a place in Qatar. Earlier today, it was confirmed that Scotland's playoff semi-final with Ukraine has been postponed in light of the invasion. That will also have a knock-on effect, of course, on the final, which will involve either Austria or Wales. And the FAI say they're in talks with UEFA about June's scheduled Nations League games with Ukraine. It's also a very strong possibility that both of those will be postponed as well.
Very interesting. So that's Russia out of the World Cup, effectively. I'm not sure of the legalities of all that. Certainly, Jonathan Wilson, when he was on with us, Dan, last week, he was saying that it was his understanding, having spoken to various experts, that the Russian Football Union, if they appeal to CAS, would have a very reasonable chance of success, and certainly would have a very reasonable chance of a suspension of their expulsion pending the case being heard, which would allow them, in effect, to play matches. So it seems like FIFA, this is just at a glance, and I'm not a legal expert, but FIFA, it seems, have almost jumped in here to lay this bye down against Poland, or for Poland, to say, well, that's a bye, regardless of whether you're now included pending the case being heard. You've no match to play against Russia, so you're effectively out of the World Cup. That's how I would read that.
Yeah, it looks like they're trying to get the horse to bolt effectively.
Yeah.
You know, so the World Cup has got to a place where you retrospectively deal with whatever scenario it comes to.
You're back in, but you've no fixtures until next year.
Yeah, whatever it might be. Now, was thinking of that conversation with Jonathan Wilson, all right, and I was reading Tariq Panja in the New York Times, who's excellent on sports governance, I suppose, and those issues, and he was saying all the sort of domino effects of this, that it might just shine light even on CAS, because CAS just exists as a sort of an independent island, but that's going to come under scrutiny, like how things play themselves out under CAS, because I sort of would agree with Jonathan's hunch that, like, in a very strict legal interpretation, Russia would have a case.
Yes, and Richie, I suspect here FIFA are acting in the full knowledge that if the Russian Football Union were successful at CAS, that the Poles would refuse to play the game, and then subsequently the Swedes would refuse to play the game, and then all hell would break loose.
Yeah, that's probably the basis for their thinking. I mean, the draw takes place next month for the group stages in Qatar, so they need to have some semblance of organisation as regards who's going there. They're already going to have that gap whereby we don't know if it's going to be Ukraine, Scotland, Austria or Wales taking up one of the positions. That won't be filled now until June, they say. But they need some kind of certainty here, because Poland have expressly said that game's not happening with Russia, regardless of how Russia line out under a neutral flag, with a neutral venue and a neutral anthem, etc., etc. That game isn't going to happen. The Poles have a line in the sand about this, the Swedes and the Czechs the same, which is why Russia have actually included those three associations in their appeal to CAS as well. They're looking to take sanctions against them because they know that there is this line drawn that over which Poland and Sweden and the Czechs won't pass. And like, I'd agree with all sides here, to be honest with you, because the right course of action is to just be decisive about it and say Poland get a bye, much like Leipzig get a bye in the Europa League through to the quarterfinals. But similarly, CAS have such a reputation on this that they do say they're looking to make a decision on a stay in the next few days, for sure. But I'd imagine they probably will allow a stay, and then we're in a very ugly position that doesn't get sorted out quickly at all.
Unless FIFA's decision now means that, like, retrospectively that can't be done. Okay, you're back in, but that game's already been decided, so FIFA almost say we got in ahead of you. That'd be my read, but who knows?
If they can take it as far as March 29th, if they can take it to the point where the Poland game against the Czechs or the Swedes happens and has a decisive winner and somebody is through to the World Cup finals, there's no comeback from Russia from there. Yeah. Like, the games won't get replayed, nothing will happen. And FIFA will just say, listen, what's done is done. We'll take a fine, we'll take a rap in the knuckles, whatever. We'll take their re-inclusion in football under neutral status. But, one of those three has gone to the World Cup and Russia can go and swing. Yeah,
I think just that we can just see Russia arguing, well, you're not deciding the other place in that other playoff until June. So,
and they'll have a good argument. I mean, FIFA are trying to
don't play these playoff games.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the case that will be argued, and it's not.
They'll have a case. I mean, it's obvious why FIFA are saying it's a bye.
Yeah, of course. No, I mean, I think it's the right course of action, but you can see obviously why it would be challenged.
Okay. Well, look, it's one of the least important aspects of this whole thing, obviously. So that's where we are there. Where are we going next, Richie?
To the Royal County, Meath's footballers look set to be without captain Shane McEntee for the rest of the season. His club, St Peter's Dunboyne, confirmed that McEntee is leaving for peacekeeping duty in Mali with the Irish Defence Forces. The halfback was involved in the most recent Meath game. That was a draw with Offaly in Division 2. With just 3 games to play of the league campaign and just 2 points to their name so far, the Royals remain in real danger of relegation back down to Division 3.
2 texts in Coleman. Let's face it, Ireland play at such a low level that Coleman could hardly be able to walk, and his leadership and experience would still make him worth this spot. We constantly look a better team with him in it. Smartness, intelligence and underrated trade in footballers. Thomas Coughlin makes a point I would agree with on YouTube. The openness of Lampard's system did not help Coleman. A lot of fullbacks would have struggled with so little protection from those in front of him. And I would say also inside him, Thomas, because that ball over the top, if you watch it again, I think it's Michael Keane. I don't know who the centre half next to Coleman was, but he's ahead of Coleman. This is insane stuff. I mean, that your centre
Yeah,
half, that your
yeah.
centre half is not on the cover when there is that much space in behind you, and there's a move going up the left hand side. For your centre half not to be 3-4 yards behind you, ready to give you a dig out, as opposed to 4 or 5 yards ahead of Coleman, is actually hard to believe. It was a astoundingly poor defence, and so, you know, unless Seamus Coleman is a 21-year-old with lightning speed, he's going to have a difficult evening. As for Everton on the whole, I mean, Pat Nevin was saying he was watching the game and it occurred to him in the first couple of minutes, God, they need to switch from a 4-1-4-1 here to a 4-2-3-1 because they're way too open in that area of the field. Lampard got around to that in around the 50-something minute.
Yeah.
So, like, when you look at the Lampard appointment, that's very shaky right now.
Well, yeah, I
Very
was
shaky.
actually thinking, and we'll probably talk about it later on. Like, I was just thinking, what would the reaction be to Jesse Marsh if he presided over that?
It would be, what do people from America know about soccer?
It would be.
Yeah.
And I thought Lampard's interview after, some people were praising him for it. I just thought it was a bit like, oh, it's not really my fault, this.
But that was his whole modus operandi at Chelsea.
Yeah.
Players got to run more. Thomas Tuchel comes in and makes instant sense
and
of
like
Chelsea.
and sometimes there's a bit of I just have a go at Lampard for the sake of it, and I'm not. But I did see his interview getting praised last night. I was like, I don't know. I just found it a bit watery.
I thought he was washing his hands of the whole thing.
Yeah, it was like this is what we've inherited. You know, people want to make these errors. It's like, I don't know. This is why managers sometimes hired to keep teams up. You know, he's not there 2 games now. You know, after a particular period of time, you have a degree of shape, and you can have. I mean, they did push Man City close recently. You know what I mean? So, but you get opened up that easily away from home.
Yeah.
You deserve questions, and I did find his interview a little bit strange.
Pat Nevin really likes Lampard, and even he was saying, watching the game, he couldn't believe the tactical setup, and then he couldn't believe it wasn't changed, and the change only happened 50 odd minutes into the game, and that's pretty damning stuff, I would say. And like Lampard, an amazing player, but I mean, he's getting these jobs based on not much else.
Yeah, and I think you know it was promising at Derby what he did. You know, and
I wouldn't overstate it.
No, I wouldn't overstate it, but I probably do agree with you. Like, I'm not saying he's just completely. It's not like it's his first job either, which could be argued either way. Like,
well, put it to you this way:
showing more, maybe.
If with a couple of days preparation in a year or 18 months' time, say they stay up, and they should stay up still, in a year, 18 months, if they were away from home and put in a performance like that, there'd be real question marks over whether or not he keeps his job. The fact that he's so recently in the job means he will, but like, that is a shocking performance.
Yeah, no, I just thought there was a hint of self-preservation mode about the interview, but maybe, I don't know, there'll be a fuller picture of what he said afterwards in time or in reflection, but there was no sense of introspection from his end of things.
No. Rich, it's a sellout.
Yes, indeed it is. Shamrock Rovers confirming today that Friday's Dublin Derby meeting with Bohemians is indeed a sellout. Approximately 7,500 supporters will be packed inside Tallaght Stadium for that one.
Very good. We'll chat to you about that in the football show. Clock's a little bit against us. Just worth mentioning Andy Murray, Rich.
Yeah, he's pledged to donate his prize money for the rest of the year to help children affected by the war in Ukraine. The 3-time Grand Slam winner is working with the charity UNICEF UK to provide medical and educational supplies even. It's also been confirmed that the sport's governing bodies will provide over €600,000 in donations themselves.
What a man.
Yeah, he's the most impressive sportsman.
Isn't he?
He's generally right on everything, isn't he?
He's right up there.
Even on just like, and no cloud of suspicion over him, unlike others in his sport. And yeah, I think some people think he's a bit dour sometimes. I think he's top class, to be honest.
I'm so with you. I thought he was dour when he first came in the scene. But
yeah,
complete 180 on Andy Murray.
No, he's way up there, yeah.
We've got Tommy Welch on the way. We've got Brian Driscoll on the way. Dan is staying with us for the evening. Richie, thank you.
Nice one, lads.
Your chance to win big. News Talk's Cash Machine.
Now, there was another winner of the cash machine today, so we have paid out over €450,000 so far this year. You have a chance to add to that figure tonight. The new figure